Good afternoon, everybody. What's up, y'all? If you're listening, watching, I appreciate you on this fine Veterans Day afternoon. I want to share a little something. I just got out of a client session and I learned something really amazing, really powerful, right? So I want to tell you a little story. Back when I was in ninth grade, or actually my whole time in high school, not only was I someone who played sports and was wrestling and playing football. Hey, Petra. But I was also somebody who was actually in Chambers Chorus and somebody who, how's it going? And somebody who was actually in the spring musical. So I acted, I sang, I played football, I wrestled. I did a little bit of everything. I was a unique kind of guy in high school. I was a thespian and an athlete, but I really didn't fit in anywhere. That's for a whole nother conversation, a whole nother topic. But in ninth grade, I was in the play Guys and Dolls in the spring musical. And there was this song in Guys and Dolls. It's just a freaking showstopper. I mean, there's a bunch, right? Which, by the way, I'm still kind of into Broadway musicals. I just don't share that side of me that much. But let me tell you something. I will cry for 3 hours straight if I go to Hamilton or Les Mis, and I do. But point is, there's this song, Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat. And the song Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat is so powerful because it's actually a lot of kind of silent messaging, or it's not silent, but like subversive messaging to tell us to not speak up, to not be different, to not challenge authority, to not move into conflict. This whole song about how when this guy's standing up and rocking the boat, he risks his whole life and the devil will drag you under if you're standing up and rocking the boat, etc. And these messages are pervasive for a lot of us. We learn at young ages not to create conflict. We either see people in our lives, for me it was my family, who did conflict really messy and ugly, and we either avoided it or it blew up and there was explosions. Or like my client today, he learned to avoid conflict because he saw his dad being very aggressive. And he decided, I don't want to be aggressive. I don't want to be the guy that scares people to get my way. So instead he learned not to work with conflict, not to stand up and challenge conflict and move into it. And there's a huge cost in your life when you do that. There's a huge cost in my life when I did that. Back when I was married and back before I turned about 31 and went through all these transformations, I used to be the kind of guy who would take responsibility, but I would never challenge anyone if they were out of integrity. I would never challenge anyone if they weren't standing up to what they said they would do or who they said they would be. And ultimately in my marriage, it cost me a lot because I was with somebody who was well-intentioned, who didn't really do anything wrong per se, but often I felt like my personal needs weren't being met. Often I felt like there were things she was doing that were irresponsible for us financially, irresponsible and affected our timeline, irresponsible and affected just the connection that we had. But I never spoke up for myself. I never spoke up for myself until it was too late. By the time I started to learn to speak up for myself, I had already lost the relationship. I had already lost the marriage. And back when I was also leading in retail, when it came down to it, I could stand up and I could lead the team and I could move through conflict, but there were always little moments that I avoided coaching a client or speaking up in a certain way. Coach is not coaching a client, coaching an employee. And it cost me a lot. I could have had a much more powerful career and I could have had a much more powerful relationship. Ultimately, not speaking up for myself, not embracing challenge, being afraid of conflict until it was too late, and then having knock down, drag out big conflict was part of the reason that my relationship didn't exist. And it was really, even if the relationship survived, I should say, I was paying a toll. I was paying a toll. It hurt a lot to bite my tongue constantly because I didn't know how to engage in healthy conflict. I only knew unhealthy conflict. So what I've learned is that actually the success of our lives can often be related to how willing and how competent we are in difficult conversations. I've learned that to create amazing personal relationships, to create amazing love relationships, to create amazing friendships, to be a leader in community, and to do the work I do, to create my own business, to coach my clients, we need to be able to move right into standing up for ourselves, speaking our mind, embracing conflict. So often we think that conflict is something where we have to either manipulate to get our way, or we have to be forceful, or we have to be dominating. But I want to tell you it's not. Standing up for yourself, holding your ground, drawing your boundaries, embracing conflict is actually not about being dominant or forceful. It's not about pain or suffering. It's the opposite. It's leadership. So next time you find yourself avoiding conflict, you find yourself biting your tongue, not speaking up, not asking for what you want, I want you to simply ask yourself this question. How can standing up for myself or speaking up for myself or embracing conflict, how can it actually come from love? Because we're used to seeing it come from anger, frustration. We're used to seeing it sometimes come from hate. We're used to seeing it come from divisiveness. But how can it come from love? And what would it look like? What would it sound like if I was embracing this challenge, this conflict, speaking up for myself, enforcing a boundary from love? And if it's related to a personal relationship especially, how can me and the other person be closer when we come to the other side of this conflict? How can we understand more about each other? What can we know about each other? What can we know about a relationship if I am leaderly and I stand into my power and I connect with this other person from love and I don't just get pushed around? I don't just bite my tongue. So Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat. Great song. I'm going to put a link to the YouTube video in the comments. But sit down, you're rocking the boat in real life, it leads to a life of disconnection. It leads to a life where we're not feeling passionate, we're not feeling excited, we're not feeling fulfilled. It leads to a life where we don't actually give the type of leadership that we want in our personal relationships, so we don't receive the kind of love that we want in our personal relationships. This one capacity, this one mindset, this one skill alone, to be able to embrace conflict and challenge and difficult conversations with courage, with heart, with skillfulness, can change a human being's life, and I love teaching it. So maybe I'll do a little bit of a content on that or some sort of workshop on that online soon. It's like, how do we ask for what we want? How do we stand up for ourselves? How do we move into conflict from love? But right now, if you can just for the next day or two or the next time you're in a situation where you need to stand up for yourself, can you ask, how can this moment where I'm standing up for myself, engaging a difficult conversation, moving into conflict, how can that come from love? If you do that, I guarantee it gets you one step closer. And even if you're not willing to step in now, it gives you perspective in your thinking and how you orient towards problems and challenges in your personal life and in your relationships. That's what I got for you. I hope this was helpful. If it's helpful, drop a comment or share this with somebody and reach out to me if you have questions about the how-tos. Peace.